In this video, we're going to take a look at what the performance of the US stock market and the Nasdaq can tell us about investor sentiment and other ways that we can correlate these behaviors with some of our crypto investing behaviors. It will allow us to have some sensible way to project what might happen and create our plans for when those things happen. We're using it as crypto investors to tell what the general global investor sentiment is. Are people hungry for risk, or are they averse to risk? The SPX 500 is the top 500 companies in the US stock market. The Nasdaq is 100 of the top companies in the world, a lot of them US focused. There are companies on the Nasdaq that are also included in the SPX 500. They both kind of have some similarity of movement, and they're both going to be something that you might want to pop back and forth and consult. I include them both here because they are kind of similar, and Nasdaq with more of a tech focus might be something where you might see a stronger correlation because cryptocurrency by its nature is all tech focused. So you might see some clues from the Nasdaq before you see clues from the SPX. Something to show you as well is the correlation that the S&P 500 has with something like Bitcoin. So let's add Bitcoin on a new price scale and see how does it correlate to the stock market. Now you'll see this was the convergence of the peaks. This was the all-time high of Bitcoin for a long time, and that was also the all-time high of the stock market for a similar amount of time. The stock market reclaimed that high at about the same time, shortly before actually, let's see, March, December, so a couple months before Bitcoin reclaimed its previous all-time high. The S&P 500 reclaimed its all-time high. Let's just expand this a little bit so it's easier to read. Now you can see too, there is a general correlation. Bitcoin is going up to here, S&P 500 going up to there. They both come down together. Now they're both going up together. On a long-term scale, this is a pretty reliable way to gauge investor sentiment, knowing that if we sit here and watch both Bitcoin and the S&P 500 return to these levels, we can then possibly expect that we will continue up after we retest those levels. That's generally how price works. Things get overheated, overinflated, and then people realize that they're maybe a little too far out in front of their skis, and they start selling assets, or they have some fear in the market. For example, right now, there's fear that inflation might not be as under control as the Fed has been trying to do, and so there's less chance of future rate cuts, and less chance of future rate cuts will also have a diminishing impact on investor sentiment in the stock market, which then translates to diminishing investor sentiment in the Bitcoin and crypto space. You can see if you come down to smaller time scales, sometimes the S&P 500 gives you a bigger clue as to what is about to happen, as Bitcoin usually is the one to play catch up. As a general investor, I'd be looking for larger pullbacks to then look to get in as a buyer, because long-term investors are, generally speaking, just buying at opportune times and holding till some future date where the assumption is that values will go up.